Welcome to Digital Marketing for Contractors, a podcast for home improvement contractors to help you crush your lead goals and take your business to the next level. Join us each episode as we give you powerful insights and practical tips on the best digital marketing strategies to help you grow your home improvement business. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Digital Marketing for Contractors podcast. This is a podcast all about helping home improvement contractors to crush your lead goals and take your business to the next level. Digital Marketing for Contractors is hosted by Fat Cat Strategies. We are a digital marketing agency based out of Raleigh, North Carolina. My name's Don, and I'm an account manager here at Fat Cat.
And I am Caitlin, back for more fun.
Glad to have you.
Thank you. I'm an account manager, business partner, all things Team Fat Cat. So let's get to it.
All right. Caitlin, our topic today is a question that I know is a burning issue for a lot of our contractors when they're thinking about digital marketing. And that is really kind of like this age-old problem that we encounter all the time of, if I'm thinking about running paid ads, if I'm going to run ads on Google, how much should I spend? What is it going to cost me to run PPC ads?
Ooh.
Right. It's a spicy question.
Favorite. My palms are sweating.
So I know you guys that are listening, you contractors, I know this is a question that you ask a lot
all
and
the
wonder
time.
about.
And
like,
you should.
Yeah. If you've never run ads before, I know that can be one of the hurdles that you're kind of facing is like, well, if I jump into this game, like how much am I going to have to spend every month on these ads? Or even if you've been doing it for a while, you might be wondering like, are we spending the right amount of money or are we spending too much? Like it can start to feel like you're throwing money at it. And do you know for sure that what you're spending is the right amount to be spending? So we want to try to kind of cover all of those things today because let's be honest, when we're talking about paid ads, like there are some things here that are really important and that contractors are trying to accomplish. I mean, when you think about like running ads on Google, you want to have the top ad. When somebody searches for you, you want your company to show up in that number one spot up at the top of the page. And that takes some real intentionality and the right amount of ad spend to be able to get into that spot.
Yes.
And because of that, like you want to make sure that you're beating out your competitors, like you want your ad to show up before theirs does. And what are you going to have to spend to be able to make that happen?
I think you've got everybody's attention.
Absolutely. I mean, we know these are like, hardcore problems that contractors are dealing with and trying to think through. So we want to tackle that today. So let's just dive in. Like when you think about that question, how much should I spend on PPC? Where would you start to try to answer it?
I know. I pause because it is the number one most important question, whether it's through the sales process or working with our fellow contractors. This is something we talk about every time we meet, every month, as we're planning for the year. What are we setting aside for our PPC budget? Should we even be running Google ads?
Yeah.
Is my business ready for more leads? Are they going to be the right kind of leads? All of those things are so important, as you're thinking about the budget that you want to spend on Google. I'm going to highly recommend, if you are not running Google ads, you should be.
Yeah.
That's the beginning and end of this. And we're going to obviously help you think through how much you should be spending, but go ahead and start looking at what are your goals? I mean, that's where it really starts for us.
Yeah.
When you're trying to figure out what's my budget, what is your marketing budget if you have one? And if you don't have a marketing budget, that's okay, but look at what you want to grow to be this year. How many leads do you want month to month? What is your sales revenue goals? All of that is going to be critical. And we always encourage, take a percentage of whatever your gross revenue goal is of the year and set aside, I'm going to say 1 to 3% of that. And it doesn't have to just be on Google ads, but use Google ads as a part of that for your marketing.
Yeah. Okay, you hit on some really big things there that I think are super important, and I love that the place where you started, which I do think is the right place to start, is to just say like, what are your goals?
Right.
I think sometimes it can feel like contractors come to us and say, what should I spend on PPC? Like there's just a magic number out there, to be able to say, well, this is exactly how much you should spend and no dollar more. And that's not really, there's no answer exactly to that kind of a question. What it really depends on is like, well, what are you trying to accomplish by running ads in the first place? What is it that you're wanting? Okay, maybe you just want more leads. Well, that's great. Do you want more leads like for all of the services that you're doing as a company? Do you want more leads for maybe just one specific division that you're trying to grow a little more because it's lagging behind? Has there been some kind of like a storm in your area that affects your business? And so you're wanting to really like capture as many leads as you can related to that service. So all of these things can really be affecting what your goals might be for your company. And you need to really be in touch with those things to know, okay, well, I want my PPC, I want my paid ads to do this for me, because that's going to really determine initially, what you need to think about and what you want to spend for it.
Absolutely. I mean, going ahead and knowing your lead to set lead ratio, like off the top of your mind, how many leads are you generating a month? How many of those leads are setting? That's the first statistic, whatever we want to call it, goal to know. What is that percentage? And then from set leads to sold, what is that percentage? And go ahead and know the moment you start to run PPC ads, those numbers are going to probably go down a little bit. And that's okay, because you are going to be generating all the leads on PPC aren't going to be perfect. And if somebody's telling you they're going to be, that's not true. Yeah. So go ahead and like get those goals in mind, that here's my set ratio, here's my sold ratio, and plan on playing 10 to 15% off of that and set some goals that way. I know that's kind of rambly and talking about a lot of numbers, but that's kind of where we're starting when we're looking at goals with our clients and how to find an accurate PPC budget for the month.
Yeah. So. Okay. This is really good. You're getting into the numbers of it. No, not the weeds. I think you're getting into the numbers that we need to help our contractors understand in order to be able to get a sense of like, hey, the way to figure out your PPC budget is actually based on numbers that come from your business, not just from like, whatever Google's numbers are. It's things that you need to know about your company to then help kind of figure out what to do with your PPC budget. Because like, here's another question to throw out in terms of thinking about like, what are your goals, is also kind of like, well, how many leads do you actually need to come from PPC?
My gosh,
as you're thinking about it, you might need to just kind of stop and ask yourself the question, like, am I just trying to like add more leads to my business and running Google ads is going to be an additional source of leads? Yes. Or am I trying to like, maybe like I'm tired of getting leads from a lead aggregator and I want to sort of like wean myself off of that source.
Own my own leads.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I want Google to kind of replace those leads, in which case you need to know like how many good leads were you getting from that source? Yeah. And that'll help you figure out like how many leads you need to get from Google and therefore what it might cost there. So
to replace that. Yeah, that's exactly.
So any of those kinds of things are really helpful to sort of like determine on the front end. And like you're saying, knowing things like your set rate and your close rate can help you figure out like how many like really good leads you need to have so that we can kind of figure out like what of those leads are going to turn into sales. And so how much revenue are you generating in order to be able to make that happen? So let's go there then. Let's talk about like getting into the numbers a little bit more of like, what do you do? Now you've got your goals kind of in mind.
Yep.
And kind of like, I think I need to get about like 10 PPC leads a month. I think if I could get 10 leads out of Google every month, then I'd feel pretty happy, about what I need. Or maybe it's, I need 5 window leads this month, and that's all you're really looking for from paid ads. That's great. But just know what your goal is to be able to get that accomplished. If you know how many leads that you need to get from Google, where do you go from there then to kind of like, let's just talk math. Like, how do you work backwards from that place to be able to get to a budget?
Yeah. I mean, and you're sitting here talking about all this and I'm like having flashbacks of ongoing conversations that I have with y'all all the time. And a lot of the time, I mean, Don, I get pushback. Well, you're the agency. Shouldn't you know? Shouldn't you be the ones that tell us how many leads, we should be generating and how many, like how much money we should be spending? I get that pushback and question all the time. The answer is, yeah, we do know some of that. We can compare to other industries that have, run similar ads. We can make some really solid projections. But at the end of the day, what's going to be the most successful for you is to hold your agency, whoever's running your PPC account, accountable for real business results. So
that's right. Yeah.
I don't know if I'm really even answering your question, but I'm sitting here thinking like, oh my gosh, I get pushback all the time. Well, you tell me how many leads I'm supposed to be generating. You tell me how much money, like me, meaning the agency. But it's a two-way street. It really is.
Yeah.
And you knowing that, hey, I've got a new sales rep who's only selling windows in, this part of the county, I'm going to need to throw some extra money at that location around window keywords. You've got to communicate that with your agency because we're not going to know that, or whoever's running your PPC ads.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, I think some of what you're saying is like, hey, you've got to set your own goals for your business. And as an agency, we can kind of help come alongside you and accomplish those goals.
Absolutely.
But we don't need to be the ones telling you what your goals are.
Right.
So you might say something, you might come to us and say like, hey, I want to get 100 leads from Google this month.
I love it.
And we might say, all right, well, let's look at what Google can actually do for you.
Yes.
And when we run the numbers, we say, you're only really likely to get 30 leads out of Google this month from what what Google can actually do and what you can afford, and we can tell you that information, but we don't need to be the one to tell you like how many leads you need to try to get or what your goals are. So I hear what you're saying.
I think that's a really good point. I mean, and on like vice versa, we could say, hey, I need, 100 PPC leads this month. I also have situations, I think you do too, where our clients just say, hey, I've got $10,000 to spend on PPC. What are we going to produce?
Yeah.
What are we going to generate? So, they already have that budget in mind, but then, we come back and we're like, hey, how many leads can I expect?
Yeah.
And that's going to ebb and flow as well. So, I mean, I see both sides of having a budget to just have a budget. And sometimes we can't even spend the budget.
Yeah.
So,
yep. Okay.
I'm kind of getting off, but I'm very passionate about this.
Let's go back to the just kind of working backwards with the math.
Please.
So let's say you as a contractor have figured out what your goal is.
Right.
You've agreed, your agency, if you've got one, has worked with you and y'all are kind of in agreement on, yes, this is a good goal. This is realistic.
Yeah.
Let's go for it. Okay. So now we have that in mind. How do we figure out what we ought to spend to be able to meet that goal? So we're starting with number of leads in mind. Like how can we help a contractor sort of work backwards from that to a budget?
Yeah, let's keep playing with the story of, you've got a new sales rep who's trying to sell some windows in a certain part of your town. I always start with what's your average ticket price.
Okay.
So that's huge. So, knowing like if you're going to need 5 new window leads to keep the sales rep happy, your average window ticket price is, I mean, we're going to ballpark, $12,000.
Sure.
Let's work backwards from there. And we also, are able to do some of our own digging. I mean, I'm trying to I'm thinking about all the tools that we have as an agency, but I'm also trying to help you guys, knowing those numbers, how much does a lead cost? And that, I think that brings it back. Like take your own numbers, whether you've run PPC or not. What is your average lead? Whether it's coming from your website, coming from a show, coming from canvassing. I mean, start there. Like, what are you expecting to pay per window lead? Am I kind of answering that question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like without having to use our data, that we can pull.
Yeah, I think if you're working with like, hey, I know I'm trying to get this amount of revenue from, this place where I'm running ads.
Correct.
And I know that like, my average ticket price is this. Then you get an idea of like how many sales you need to make.
Yes.
And then if you know like, I know how many sales I need to make and I know what my close ratio is. Then you can back up from there and figure out,
Work
okay, well, I need
backwards.
this number of appointments. And if, you know what your set rate is, then you can back up from appointments to number of leads. So now you've got the total number of leads that you need to get in a month. And then at that point is when you can start doing some research. So you've got all your numbers in place.
Exactly.
Now you can start doing some research on the Google side of things.
Yes.
What is, an average lead going to cost on Google? So this one is a little more tricky. Like you can't dig this one up from your own numbers. So let's say it's a contractor who's never run ads on Google before. Like what tips would we give them for kind of figuring out how much is a lead going to cost me on Google next month? Like where would we even start there?
Woo. Again, if you haven't picked up yet, this is a hard question. And if somebody can answer it for you pretty quickly about how much you should spend on PPC, I think, I don't know. I would question them. I would challenge them because we're doing this of tons of years of experience and it changes. And I'm going to get back to your initial question, but the history of Google ad spend, even since the pandemic, I mean, I can look year over year at what we spent in the same market, and Google is getting more expensive.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, and so I'm sitting here we can look at data and we can compare, but things are just getting more expensive across the board. And so it is hard to say, set aside $200 on Google for a window lead, and I mean,
right.
Again, I'm gonna lean a lot on your own data to let us know, this is what I am getting right now for my window leads. Can you beat it? Can Google beat it?
Yeah. I think that's great. I think you're answering the question the best that we know how to answer it, which is hey, until you actually do it, until you actually start spending some money on Google, it's really hard to figure out what it's actually going to cost you. And that's just because it's going to change from location to location.
Absolutely.
It's going to change from one time of the year to the next. Mm-hmm. It's going to change depending on what service you're advertising for. Yep. So all of these things are factored. It's going to change depending on what your competitors in your area are doing. So all of these things are factors that are going to change things around. And so until you start doing it, we just, nobody really knows exactly. An agency can help do some prediction for you, but it's just that. It's prediction. And I think, to what you said about Google getting more expensive, for some of our clients right now, we see leads on Google costing anywhere from $50, $75 a lead to $250 a lead or more, so it's a huge range of what, a lead can cost and, what time of year that cost is going to factor in and, how it's going to change. So there's lots of things there. And I think maybe for a brand new contractor on Google Ads, that's maybe the thing to do is to work with a range, to just kind of say well, let's say the lead costs us $100. Right. How much could we afford to spend? What if that lead costs us $250? How much could we afford to spend? And then you can kind of get a range of well, if I need 10 leads, I might have to spend anywhere from $1,000 to $2,500 to be able to get that. That at least kind of gives you a ballpark to play in. And then maybe you can say, well, in my budget, I can afford $2,000. So, okay, great. Start there and see what happens. And then month to month, you're going to get more data to be able to kind of make some better adjustments and figure out where to go from there.
That's really important what you just said, month to month. Don't give up. Don't cut the ties on Google too quickly. I mean, to somebody who has never run Google Ads, it is going to be a shock a shock to the system within the first 6 to 8 weeks of turning on a Google Ads account. Things are going to be, spoiler alert, a little bit more expensive.
Yes.
But that's,
and why is that? Explain that. Why is it at the beginning of running ads? And this is true even for contractors who've been running ads for a long time, but start running ads maybe for a new service or a new product,
in a new area.
Why is it more expensive in that kind of first couple few weeks or couple months of running things?
Well, our friend Google,
she says with no sarcasm at all.
Our friend Google, really, I mean, in that part of that algorithm changes, and I want to say what I can say, but there's a learning phase. I mean, your account is going to have to learn. I mean, What is your website? Are you sending traffic about a window to a page on your website about a door? Google is never going to let that work. And Google has to learn that. Google's not going to know that the day you turn on your ads.
Right.
So it's literally called a learning phase.
Yeah.
So that is what takes the longest time. And then, I mean, that's why we also encourage, if you can keep your ads running for 3 to 6 months before you change things, you're going to see those cost per conversions go down.
Yeah, that's right. So Google's learning your content, like kind of figuring out what's on your website and, you know, what works. But they're also learning your customers. Google is trying to figure out like, who is the right person to put this ad in front of so that they're most likely to click on it and to become a lead, you know? And over time, Google gets better at that because you generate leads from your ads, and the more leads that you generate, the more Google goes, oh, that one worked. So let's do more of those types of, you know, go after more of those types of people to be able to show these ads to. And that's when your costs start to come down a little bit, is because Google starts to figure out, yeah, if we show it to more of these people, we get better results. And your ads will do that over time, but you have to be patient for that.
Be patient. And we should have said this at the top of the call. When we're saying the word lead pertaining to PPC and Google Ads, you'll also hear the word conversion.
That's right.
And a conversion is a phone call, if you've got that set up correctly, or a website form submission.
Yeah.
Those for y'all, that should be the most important conversions. Don't worry about, you can set up conversions for clicks. Don't do that. Don't be fooled by that. You want a lead or a conversion, which is a phone call or a form submission.
Yeah.
And that's what we're tracking.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So I think we've helped out maybe the contractor who is maybe brand new to Google Ads.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the contractor who's been running Google Ads for a while. Yeah. Hi. We know there's a lot of you. We work with you regularly.
Yes.
And they may be wondering like, okay, I've been spending money on Google for a while.
Lots of money.
Yeah. And
no ROI.
Yeah. What's happening here? Like, where's this money going? You know, how do we help a contractor like that figure out, are they spending the right amount of money? Should they be spending different money? And here's the, like, maybe, you know, all important question. Like, is it really even about the money? Like, is the money the problem for them? And if not, how do they figure that out?
Well, those weren't loaded questions.
Right. Lots of questions.
Man, that's tough. You know, again, I'm going to like go back to the scenario of, you know, we have a bunch of clients that, you know, we already know a PPC budget because of previous years and what we saw and spent. That's usually my starting point. If you've got historical data of what you've spent year over year, month over month, I would start there. If you start to see that the leads that you're generating are not matching to the similar numbers you had the previous year at that same time, it is, again, to Don's point, it's hard to measure it month over month because of seasonality and so forth. But year over year, if you're seeing those numbers start to fall, absolutely start to question, are these leads good? Am I spending too much money? Am I not spending enough money? Am I leaving? I mean, we have situations where, you know, we're like, hey, you should be spending more money. Can you take on more leads? Because we're blowing through your budget pretty quickly, because people are actively searching on your services. So to you regular PPC spenders, how much should you be spending? How to know? Again, I'm going to continue to say lean on your own data, lean on looking at your CRM and tracking your PPC leads and looking at those numbers. So stick with the budget unless you are having an awesome year and you want to throw a little bit more money at PPC. Experiment with that, see if you can generate more leads, but then cut back if you need to as well. So really lean on the data and lean on a partner that is aware of your data and aware of your historical trends, which whether it's in, you know, a spreadsheet with all the PPC spend you've ever spent, or, you know, it's in your Google Ads account, because you can always go back in time and look at that too. So
this is great.
Yeah.
So, okay. It's, this is highlighting for me something that I think we'll do in another episode, because this is sort of outside the scope of this episode, but Absolutely. So, I think one thing just to kind of let contractors know as you're thinking about this, and you may be kind of listening to this conversation and going, okay, like we've done the research. I think we're spending basically the right amount of money, what we should be on Google Ads, but we're either not generating leads or the leads we're generating just aren't good leads. Okay, let me just say to you, like, that's a good conversation. That's a different conversation than the one we're having right now.
Agreed.
It's not necessarily about the money. It doesn't mean that you should be spending more money. It also doesn't mean that Google Ads is trash and you should stop spending money on Google Ads. It probably means that your ads themselves aren't good.
Right.
And
your
that's
keywords.
that's a whole different conversation
Right.
than, what we're having right now. And that's a whole episode by itself to kind of talk through like what makes for good ads. So we'll do that another time. But I just want to say that like reassuringly, like don't abandon your strategy.
Correct.
If you've evaluated the finances and come to the conclusion that the finances are right, then, what you need to next look at is the quality of your ads. And we'll talk about that, in another episode.
Love
so
it.
yeah, really, really good. Okay. As we sort of wrap up here, what I do want to say is a couple things. One is, let's just be honest and kind of let the cat out of the bag here and just say, all of this is guesswork.
It is.
It is. It's just guesswork. And that's like, that's hard to say as an agency because we're supposed to sound like the professionals and like we absolutely know like what we're doing. We do know what we're doing.
We do.
But we are having to make educated guesses as well.
Always.
Yeah.
And keep track of it. I mean, if you don't know how much money you're spending on PPC month to month, that's a huge mistake. Have somewhere you're keeping up with that. Because that's the only way you're going to know, really if what you're doing is working.
Yeah,
so
that's right. So just be aware, like there is some guesswork involved, but it can be educated guesses. And that's what I wanted to say just from the agency side of things is that if you do work with an agency, there are some things that an agency can do to help you out with forecasting. So Google has some tools actually to help with advertising forecasting where you can look at like how many searches are there going to be in your area for, the things that you're advertising next month or next quarter or, at whatever point in time in the year. And how much are those searches likely to cost? So all of these kinds of things, Google uses previous data to be able to make some really good guesses about that. And using those tools, a good agency can help you figure out, here's probably what you could get out of Google Ads next month. Here's probably what you ought to spend. Again, it's guesswork, but at that point, it's a really good educated guess. And, it's not a guarantee, but it is a pretty good prediction. And with that in mind, a good agency can really help you hone in on the right budget for you and for your business, spent on the right keywords, the right search terms, so that you are making the most out of your ads. So if you're listening to that and you're thinking, man, that is the help that I need today, sign me up. We would love to help you with that. If you want to go to fatcatstrategies.com/call. You can schedule a call with us and we would love to talk through your PPC goals and budget plans and all of that with you to help you figure out what's the best way to do that. How can we maximize your Google ads and help you get the most out of those for your business? So again, schedule a call with us today at fatcatstrategies.com/call. That's it for today on Digital Marketing for Contractors. We've loved talking to you. We look forward to talking to you again the next time. We'll see you then.
Thanks, y'all.
Digital Marketing for Contractors is created by Fat Cat Strategies. For more information, visit fatcatstrategies.com.